Well, again, thank you so much for being here tonight to take part in these visioneering sessions. Your participation reassures me of your desire to see our church reach as many souls in Middle Georgia as possible. And not only here, but around the world, because we've really tried to focus on having a reach beyond ourselves, beyond just our city, but to our region and our state and the world. And it's exciting for me to have a venue and a format by which to cast vision to you, because I believe that casting vision is one of the most important and strategic aspects of what a senior pastor is called to do by God, particularly as a church is growing in its influence and its ministries. I think there's a constant need to be able to cast vision, and it's important from a biblical perspective. Let me read to you a scripture just very quickly. I'm not going to preach. All of you can say amen and praise the Lord for that. But it comes from Habakkuk chapter 2. Then the Lord answered and said, "Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." And the biblical writer gives us some real practical instructions that really the things that God puts in our heart by way of purpose and vision, we need to write them down. We need to make them clear, because vision is only powerful unless it's understood and it's received. So that requires of us as leaders to have dialogue with you. This is not a lecture. This is a dialogue. We'll have opportunity for questions and answers at the end, as we did in last month's session. So this is a dialogue for you to understand, because one of the key components to leading change in any organization, but particularly religious organizations, is to build a guiding coalition. I've been doing that to the best of my ability with our staff and board for the better part of this year, talking about these things that I'm going to discuss with you. But you're a critical part of this. You're the key component to this. And so it's important for us, after our backdoor discussions of talking about things and working on things, to come and have this conversation with you and allow you to understand and to have the opportunity to buy into it, to wrestle with some of these things as we have wrestled with things. And so we give you that privilege and that opportunity tonight. So please understand that tonight, it's not my intention to be overly philosophical. I don't want to be overly professorial. I'm not going to try to make this into a lecture or a class. However, it's important for you to understand the context of why we are retooling. Again, we're talking about visioneering, a blueprint for our church's future. And as I talked to you last month, when we talk about visioneering, we're talking about just like an architect or an engineer lays out a building or begins to construct spaces, we are trying to retool and construct for you a picture of what the ministry at First Assembly of God is going to look like in the years to come. The reason that we have to do that is because if we're intent upon reaching people, we have to recognize that culture is changing rapidly around us. Therefore, our message remains intact. It is unchangeable. We stand firm on the doctrines that we preach, the things that we believe. We are passionate on those things. We are passionate in our defense of those things. However, it does call upon us to look at our methodologies and to make sure that our methodologies are best connecting the eternal truth of God with the changing culture which is around us. The problem is that meantime churches want to elevate methodologies to the level of message. Anytime you do that, you're in trouble. Anytime you try to make a particular delivery system of ministry sacred, people are going to fight over it. People are going to fight over the wrong things. To borrow this phrase, the emphasis is going to be on the wrong syllable. The emphasis on the wrong syllable, for those of you that didn't get what I just said. You'll put the emphasis in the wrong place. And so we're going to try to kind of cut through some of those things to give you the underlying principles of some of the things that we're talking about. I have a fundamental belief that I try to teach our staff on a regular basis, and that is, it is our responsibility as leaders to answer the why questions that arise in our leadership quest. I realize that some leaders in their leadership style are more command and control, and they issue dictates, and it's like lead, follow, or get out of the way. In my view, in my leadership style, I don't feel comfortable with that. I feel like we need to have buy-in, we need to have understanding, and so that's why we want to answer the why questions of doing what we do, because I believe when the answers that we give to the why questions are tied to redemptive reasons, or essentially things that build God's kingdom, it's much easier for people to accept the necessary changes that come with a growing organization. So I feel like if we can answer the why questions and tie them to biblical purposes of why we're doing these things, then there's a light bulb that can come on for all of us and say, oh, I see, I understand. This helps us to reach people more effectively for Jesus Christ. That's our purpose. And as I made reference to this morning in one of the service, I know I didn't do it in both, these visioneering sessions are the result of a comprehensive strategic plan that I authored in consultation with our staff and board. The writing of the document was a result of about 1 or 2 months of thought and prayer from me, a month of talking with the staff, and 4 to 5 months in consultation and prayer with the board. Now, it's my intention to share this with you piece by piece, bit by bit, over the next few months. Some might say, well, Pastor, why don't you just show us a strategic plan you came up with, and we can read it and save yourself all this hot air, and we can just, you can answer questions for us. Well, no, you would blow up my email if I did that. I'd have more questions than I could answer. I couldn't effectively begin to communicate with you. So that's why we're chopping it up in pieces, so that we can have an ongoing conversation about these things and to try to shed as much light on these things as possible. This strategic plan is a living document that is under constant refinement with addition and deletion as God makes known His will to us. However, we have an essential core of understanding in this plan that we as a board and a staff have agreed to and entered into the minutes of our church as a foundation to go forward. Now, here's something else I want you to understand. In the board, we operate by the principle of unanimity. That's something that I asked for when I came to be the pastor here. What does that mean? That means unless we're all for it, it doesn't go forward. Unless we have 100% agreement, we don't go forward. Now let me be transparent with you. Many of the things that we talked about, we agreed upon about 90% of right on the bat. And those board members that are here tonight, you can nod your head and agree with that. About 90% we agree. There were 10% we really couldn't find common ground on. And some of these things we're still working on because it's a work in progress. There's a lot that needs to be defined. But we did not take it to a vote until we had a feeling that God had brought a consensus understanding to us. And that's why our process within the board took 4 or 5 months. Because I want to make sure that we are all on board, that we're all prayerfully considering these things. I think God honors unity. And I hope that the board can attest to the fact that I never try to shove anything down their throats. I throw it out there. They give their feedback. I want to assure you, while we have a very supportive board, they are not a yes board. We grapple with the issues. We talk about the issues. We go back and forth on things. And sometimes it takes us a couple of months to kind of come together and to really feel a sense of God's direction for us. But I want you to know that is the atmosphere that we try to operate in as your leaders. No, so tonight's agenda is going to take on the following portions. I regret that I won't have all these things on the PowerPoint for you. Time simply did not allow. But let me give you the several facets to our agenda tonight. Number one, I want to give you an understanding of our growth trends over the last 3 years. Secondly, I want to identify potential barriers to our future growth. Third, I want to talk to you about personnel and portfolio adjustments within our staff that allows us to achieve our goals and overcome our barriers. Number 4, I want to give you an update on our Macon campus effort that we talked with you about last month. I want to also next allow for a question and answer time, and then finally to have some targeted intercession for God's favor upon our efforts in the Macon campus, that God would help us to see that take place and become a reality. So let me begin tonight by talking about our growth trends over the last 3 years. Needless to say, God has blessed us with growth. Without a shred of false humility, and I mean that with all my heart, let me say unequivocally that only God should receive glory for this. Only God should receive glory for this. Behind the Lord, we have been gifted with your loving and generous support, which continues to prove critical in reaching our goals for Jesus. Folks, we can't do it without you. We can't do it without your moral support, your prayer support, your financial support. You're the key that makes everything happen. This is not a top-down thing. This is a collaborative effort. When we talk about team here at First Assembly, we're not talking about the pastoral team, though that's one facet. We're not talking about the staff and the board, though that is an aspect. We're talking about the staff, the board, and the entire church as a team working to try to reach God's vision and goals for our church. Behind your support, next, I've had the privilege to work with most outstanding boards, and I say that plural because I've worked with them in various forms over the last 3 years. And these boards that I've worked with, they have been some of the most wonderful boards to serve with that I've had in 16 years of pastoral ministry, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Most of you know that I'm transparent to a fault, and I want to tell you, we've got a great board at First Assembly. I pity churches where pastors and boards have adversarial relationships, where behind the pastor's back, the board talks about the pastor, and behind the board's back, the pastor talks about them. That doesn't happen here. I just want to let you know that doesn't happen here. We love each other, we pray for each other, we support each other, we talk openly, we talk after meetings, before meetings, we have a great relationship, and I am so thankful for the leadership of our board. And then beyond that, we have a hardworking, talented staff that has embraced my values and vision, and they have worked tirelessly to implement ministries and programs that have been crucial and essential to our success in reaching people for Jesus. Those are the key critical factors to our success. And so again, would you please give our staff, our board, and yourself a big round of applause tonight? You deserve it. I began as your pastor on the last Sunday of August 2008. Now, I want to give you this context, and numbers are so tricky, and I always get nervous talking about them because I just feel like people are going to misunderstand. So I'm trying to build context. Please understand this. My first month as pastor, we averaged 385 people in Sunday morning attendance. In all candor and truthfulness, we did not experience much sustained growth in my first year as your pastor. I believe that after my first year in serving here, we only averaged about 425 to 435 people. And I think that's to be expected. I think I was learning you and you were learning me, and we were discovering each other and what makes us tick. And so I think that's just part of the process that churches go through in transitions. In the second year, we began to break through the 500 barrier and averaged close to 500, not quite, but averaged close to the 500 mark for the second year of my pastorate here. And now I've completed the third year, going into my fourth. In the third year, we have averaged, and this is a current statistic, between 630 and 650 people in Sunday morning attendance. For this year, Easter was, of course, our high water mark. We had 830 in attendance on Easter. But here's what will blow your mind. Oddly enough, behind Easter, the first Sunday after school was back in session, which I believe, according to my notes here, is August the 7th. Make sure I'm getting that right. It's August 7th. We had 746 in attendance on August the 7th. Let's give the Lord a good praise offering for that. Amen. I will tell you, that caught me, the staff, the board. We all were surprised by that. Now, in candor, we have not maintained that. But when we saw that happen in August, and I'm going to talk to you about our growth cycles, how we grow here at First Assembly in terms of historical trends. I began to realize, I've got to really begin to implement plans more aggressively. I've got to really formulate thoughts. We've got to get prepared. I don't want to be like the Department of Transportation. If you work for them, I'm very sorry. But we didn't want to build a roadway 20 years after we needed it. We wanted to be ahead of things, thinking things through, planning for the future. And so that's when we really began to ramp up and have some strong discussions. So as a result of this growth, we've added the second service. Our first service runs between 200 and 250 people. The second service averages between 380 and 400 people. As a point of reference, today was a low Sunday, of course, following the Thanksgiving holiday. We have tons of people that are still traveling right now trying to make it home. But today we had a total of 582 with 206 in the 8:30 service and 376 in the 10:45 service. That's a very low Sunday for us given our current trends. So essentially, if you look at where we've been averaging over the last 3 years, we've seen a 68%, almost a 70% growth in attendance in Sunday mornings over primarily the last 18 months. The growth surge really has come in the last year and a half. Now, let me explain to you our cycles of growth. If you're a farmer, you need to understand what your growing seasons are. At least that's what they tell me, because I'm no farmer. And in Georgia, I hear that you have two. Well, we only have one, really, at First Assembly. We grow strongly from January through about the first of the middle of May. I mean, and sometimes it just comes in like a flood. I mean, we'll have some Sundays in February and March where we'll have 16 visiting families to follow up on. I mean, it's just, and we don't know where they come from. It's internet, drive-by, invitations. It just happens for some reason. When we go into the summer, a lot of churches go into summer slump. They just plummet to the bottom. And we don't do that. We drop off a little bit, but we basically have a slight drop-off and maintain our attendance through the summer. The drop-off primarily is because our younger families take their vacations during the summer months. It's the only time they can because their kids are out of school. Then we go into fall, and typically churches that I've been associated with in the past had a growth season after school starts and the first of the year. We don't, because I believe that we've retained, and I'm thankful for this, a larger, older constituency here at our church. And some of the older folks are smarter than the younger folks, and you wait till it gets a little cooler before you take your vacations. And so you start to leave out in the fall when things are a little nicer, and so we kind of get the double whammy. But so we kind of go just up a little bit in the fall and almost back to where we left off in May. Then we come back into January and the growth cycle starts all over again. As I mentioned to you, when we saw 750 in August, right after school started, we thought, oh my goodness, you know what, are we going to see a growth season in the fall that we haven't expected? That has not come to fruition. It's followed the normal path that it seems to have followed over the last several years. So that gives you a context of our growth. Let me give you some barriers to our future growth. I believe that we have good health in our church and our ministries. I hope that you would agree with that. People are being saved consistently. That's a sign of health. People are being discipled in their faith. That's good health. The Spirit of God is moving. We're seeing fruit of these things in our ministries. We're seeing people growing in grace. All these things, these are good signs of health. So I'm not concerned about that. In fact, as we've seen fluctuations in attendance during the fall, we have not seen a corresponding fluctuation in finances. In fact, we continue to see increase in finances. And so that tells me that our core is growing stronger. We simply have people that are displaced, traveling, going here, there, and everywhere, and that when we come back in the spring, we'll be right on track again. So we are growing in our core. We are growing in a healthy way. Therefore, my premise has always been is that healthy things grow. You don't have to make them grow. You don't have to manipulate. You don't have to force it. If it's healthy, it just grows. If our children are healthy, they naturally grow up. If they're not, if they stunted in their growth, we begin to take them to doctors to find out what is hindering that growth. There is some sort of abnormality or dysfunction within their body that needs to be dealt with. The same thing is true of churches. If we are not growing, if we are plateaued or in decline, there is some sort of dysfunctionality or abnormality that we've got to deal with, that we've got to confront, we've got to pray it out, we've got to work through these things in order for the church to become healthy again and grow. However, let me say this to you, growth can threaten the health of ministries by creating undue strain on our facilities due to a lack of space, and I'm particularly referring to programming space of ministries like Bible fellowship and children and youth and things of that nature. But it also creates undue strain on our staff personnel. Our staff has not increased a whole lot in terms of our essential staff members in the 3 years that I've been here, though we've had a 70% growth. We are so thankful to Kathy Trout, who, and I'm looking for Kathy if she's here. She may not be here. I think maybe traveling. Oh, she's nursery? All right. Well, if she can hear me somewhere, I want to tell Kathy I love her. She's come on board as a part-time receptionist for us. To this time, Beverly's been carrying the weight of all that. And when you consider a church of our size, we have one receptionist person. That means all the staff, we're writing our own letters. I do my own PowerPoint every week. We do all that stuff. I mean, we write our own notes, and because there's simply, it's really not even conceivable for two people to be able to handle all that. We've got to remain pretty self-sufficient. So that's always creating a strain. The growth is creating a strain. The follow-up, the creation of ministries, it's just a lot. There are many weeks, and I don't say this with any type of pride or that you need to pat me on the back, but there are some weeks, man, that are 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and it's just because it calls for it. Before I left for this recent trip, from Sunday to Wednesday, in a recent week, I'd already worked 67 hours between Sunday and Wednesday. That's about 16 hours a day for 4 straight days. And so, and the staff, they go through these spurts too, where they're living under this kind of pressure and workload. So that's what I'm most concerned about. I want you to know that due to my own tendencies to overwork and the subsequent damage that is done to me, and I've been very transparent about this, it's done to me through the years with regard to depression and burnout. I am particularly sensitive to preserving the spiritual and emotional well-being of our staff and their families. The staff knows if they want to get in trouble with me, big time, I mean where my head spins around and I'm capable of projectile vomiting across the room, they just stop taking their day off. If they stop taking their day off, they're dead meat. I mean, I will have the most confrontational conversation with them if they are violating personal Sabbath issues of not taking time off. That is essential here. We've got to have it because I don't want them to fall into some of the traps that I've fallen into over the years. At times, and I say this with an open apology to my wife who's present here and my children, I have not been the best father and I've not been the best husband at times because I've pushed it too far. I burned the candle at both ends and I've allowed myself to emotionally cave in, and I've not really been, while I've been physically present, I've not been emotionally present many times throughout my ministry over the last 16 years. And I'm trying real hard to manage myself better and to make sure that I manage them, to make sure that they're strong, that they're healthy, and that their families are healthy. So I want to break down these areas of barriers by first talking about space. Everybody with me? Everybody say space. You're being quiet. Space. The conventional wisdom throughout the years has been the 80% rule. If the sanctuary gets beyond 80%, then your church is not going to grow anymore. That's what all the experts tell you. You read the books. However, experts have rethought this, I think, wisely, and it's not 80% anymore. In contexts like ours, it's about 70%, maybe 65%. I've got a friend that pastors in suburban Milwaukee that's flying in tonight to spend some time with me in planning and prayer over the next few days. So we kind of support each other in our own ministries. He works on about a 60% premise because we who are more a part of a suburban area like Warner Robins, a bedroom community, we don't like violation of personal space. So you get much over 70%, it gets to feel a little bit too crowded to us. Here's what I also want you to look at. I want you to notice how long our rows are. And I want you to notice where all the empty seats are in our rows. They're all in the middle. Okay? There's a few rare exceptions here where some of you are sitting in the middle, but primarily the empty seats that we have are in the middle. You know why that is? It's because everybody wants to sit on the end of the row where they can get out and go early to Golden Corral. And nobody wants to come in and crawl over somebody else to sit in those middle seats. And so those middle seats rarely completely fill up. So we're really dealing with a 70% rule. However, this 70% rule applies beyond the sanctuary. It applies to the parking lot. It applies to the Bible fellowship, the Sunday school areas, all those spaces. Therefore, when an area exceeds 70%, the growth begins to taper off and diminish. And we can sit here and watch it. I mean, it's strange. We can go up over 70%, and we will stay full for about 2, 4, maybe 6 weeks at the max, and then we drop right back down again. It's like people don't like being that full, and it's almost like a subconscious thing. The second aspect of barriers for growth is relationships. Church growth, people, seasoned ministers tell us that regardless of how good the music or the preaching is, how attractive the building or the location may be, or how relevant the programs, unless a person makes 4 to 6 friends in 6 months, they're gone. Gone. So if they like my preaching, big deal. If they like our ministry format, big deal. They like the music, big deal. They may think the building's great. They may think the coffee bar's the coolest. But unless they develop 4 to 6 friends, they're not going to stay. Unless they have some sort of historic, intrinsic tie to the organization. They were raised there. They've been there for lots and lots of years. People without relationships are going to go somewhere where they can find relationships. And I believe that we have experienced this to a small degree this fall. Some of the fluctuation, I think, is due in part to this. People must be able to connect. Everybody say connect. So what have we done to try to remedy this? Well, we've tried some things, but it's not been enough. Number one, we've implemented Life Track. Life Track starts with a newcomer luncheon, and then immediately begins that evening with 3 weeks of classes on Sunday nights, 6 o'clock, fireside room, where we go over 3 different concepts. Connect, taught by me. Conform, taught by Pastor Richard. And Commit, taught by Pastor Sean. Connect is how you connect with the church, what we're all about, philosophy, how we're governed, how we're structured, yada, 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 yada. Then we go into conform, is how do we conform our lives to Jesus? What do we believe? What are the disciplines like prayer and giving and worship and faithful church attendance? We go through all that. And then we go into commit with really how do you make a commitment to this church? How do you get involved in ministry? How do you become a member here? Now, the first Life Track class produced over 30 new members in its first cycle. So I was hoping somebody's going to praise the Lord for that. Mr. Q, but it's okay. It's all right. Which brings us now to a point where of signed members on our membership roll, we are just shy of 400 members now at First Assembly. It's great. We've begun the Abundant Living classes on Tuesdays. We're seeing 60 to 80 in attendance for those classes, dealing with Weight Watchers, at-risk parenting skills, health, nutrition, and fitness, addiction and dependency issues, Financial Peace University. We're really pleased with the turnout that we're seeing there and the benefit that people are gaining to their lives. And the addition of the coffee bar and the additional fellowship space has been wonderful. It's amazing. Before we kind of did the coffee bar thing, people would all kind of knot up together out there in the foyer, and then it would be kind of claustrophobic, and then everybody kind of just trickle out the door. Nobody talk, nobody would linger. Now, we have to beat you guys away with a stick. Just go home. Just go home. I want to go eat lunch sometimes, just go. No, I'm teasing. So you guys sit around tables and talk and have coffee and donut, and sometimes a lot of you get here early and just sit and talk with each other on the couches. That's helped us some. And we've also urged our Sunday school teachers to take on the Bible fellowship concept to really provide some fellowship opportunities in tandem with their class. And for those that are utilizing this, they're seeing great success, and we're seeing some camaraderie and unity like we didn't before. So let me ask you a question, okay? This is for you to answer. How easy is it for you to connect and build relationships in a worship service? We're in one right now, basically. I might as well be up here preaching and dissecting a biblical passage. Right now, as I'm talking, how easy is it for you to build a relationship with somebody else? You can't. It would be rude of you if you started trying to talk to somebody else while I'm up here talking. It'd be rude of you if you were doing that during the singing. And really, that's not what this service is designed for. This service is designed for you to encounter the presence of God. For you to hear the word, allow the Spirit of God to touch your life, for you to make life-changing decisions, for God to do a work in you. That's what this is for. This service is not designed for relationship building. So, small groups are the only way for that to happen. And Bible fellowship is currently our only means to facilitate relationship building, but therein lays the problem. With our current attendance of 640 people on Sunday morning in Sunday morning worship attendance, we are averaging around 250 to 260 people in Sunday school. Now, some of you say, well, boy, that stinks. Well, here, let me explain the problem. Of that 250 to 260 people, the vast majority are comprised of long-term members of First Assembly. I would say if you go and do a survey of the people that are in Sunday school right now or Bible fellowship, about 80 to 85% are people who were here when I got here. And you've been here a long time before I got here. So we have very few newer people that are really finding their way into Sunday school. We're thankful for the core folks that attend Sunday school. It's great in Bible fellowship. But let me say this to you. We have at least 6, maybe 7. And Chris, you can nod or kind of redirect me. We may have as many as 8, but we have at least 6 classes that are running well in excess of 80% or more. Some are running more than 100% full. I know for my wife, and I'm going to speak for her, she's teaching Hayden's age class. There have been recent Sundays where children have been sitting in the floor with no seats, nowhere to put them. We have that same problem in several of our adult classes of having to pull in chairs. We're seeing that at times at Pat and Leon, the fireside room. You guys are filling up. We see that with Ken and Beverly back here in the choir room. Richard's pulling in chairs in his class. The kids' classes, we don't have a place to put them. We don't have any place to put them. So what do? Well, I believe that the answer is found in the addition in a +1 model of home fellowship groups that we would call connect groups. Now, no one start throwing up or anything yet, okay? As you may have noticed, we are piloting this approach through men's ministries through a concept known as affinity groups. If you saw the video presentation of announcements, which aired in the first service, not in the second due to technical difficulties, In the first service, there was a slide there that talked about men's small groups. And it was based upon hunting, fishing, golfing, breakfast, lunch groups, construction, missions. So we're trying to gather men around similar interests to get together and just do life together. That's an affinity group. Now, there's still more needed. The number one, hear me please, the number one request that I receive from newcomers, and we've had a lot of them in the last few years, is for home groups. It's what all of them ask for. The constant refrain that I hear from those who are trying to find a church in this area, and I heard it twice this morning from 2 visiting families, is the difficulty they find in connecting with other people in relationship, coupled with the difficulty of finding a way to be involved in ministry. Now, we're still a work in progress, but we're trying to address that to the life track to help get people into ministry. We haven't begun to address the small group issue that we have. Therefore, we are looking at launching small groups, home groups, in an off-night format sometime in the first quarter of 2012. This will in no way affect or alter our current Sunday school or Bible fellowship model. This will be done to offer a Band-Aid to a desperate need. So it's a +1 deal. Because here's the reality. Those of you that grew up in a Sunday school-based model usually doesn't have a lot of desire to go to a home group. They kind of creep you out for some reason. I know because I grew up in a Sunday school model. It's a little too touchy-feely. It's those that have been a part of churches where home groups have been the thing they've been raised on, they really have no affinity for Sunday school. It's too impersonal. It's a one-way conversation. It's a lecture-based model. And so we kind of have this thing going on here of how we come about that. Now, there are critics on both sides. Well, the critic of the home group says, well, it's just all fellowship and we're not really learning the Bible. Well, that's not true because there is a study component that can take place in that. And there are critics of the Bible fellowship model, Sunday school-based, say, well, it's just all lecture. And that's not true because we're trying to incorporate fellowship into that model as well. We're trying to find some middle ground somewhere so that people can connect. So we're not taking anything away. We're simply adding this on. But again, I want to emphasize this is a Band-Aid to a desperate need. We're still working on this, and I want to be very honest about that. So we begin to ask specific questions. We'll give you the best answers we have at the moment. But these small groups would happen on a Friday or Saturday or some other night of choosing that's workable for those that are interested in small groups beginning, hopefully, first quarter 2012. Now, here's where I need you to really listen close. And everybody smile. Just really smile at me right now. Not very convincing. Small groups will be implemented on a larger scale when the church begins a third Sunday morning worship service. You say a third Sunday morning worship service. It would occur at 8:30, 10 o'clock, and 11:30. It's tight. It's tight in time. It's the same format that we have for the early service right now, with the first 2 services needing that same time constraint, with the third service being a little more open-ended. You say, when will that happen? Well, the answer is, I don't have a crystal ball, but the plan is when the 10:45 service reaches 70% capacity. You say, well, we got all kinds of room in the first service. You're right. But not everybody wants to get up and come at 8:30. So when the second service at 10:45 fills up beyond that 70%, then we've got to begin to look at starting another service so that we're taking pressure off that service and allowing the church to continue to grow. So that will be the trigger for a larger implementation of small groups. You say, how far away are we from this scenario? Well, our current seating here in the sanctuary is 625 people. 70% of that is 435. So when we begin to go north of 400 in current sanctuary attendance here in this room, adults and young people on Sunday morning, and we do that for a sustained period of time in consultation with the board, we will then initiate the third service. Now, our current sanctuary totals for the second service typically range from 300 to 350. Today, we were 290, and this is an off Sunday. This is a holiday weekend. So we basically have room for somewhere between another 50 to 80, maybe on the top end 100 people in the second service. before we need to initiate a third Sunday morning worship experience. Now, some of you have said, well, why can't we go to Saturday night? I like Saturday night, but you know what? This is going to sound really selfish, but with the kind of workload that we're under as a staff, Saturday night takes away a crucial family night that we have with our families as a staff. Therefore, if we can try to be wise and smart and do 3 on Sunday morning, I would prefer to do that. If it doesn't work, we'll be flexible, we'll make the sacrifice, we'll try Saturday night instead. But that has been a regular question that's come up that I wanted to answer on the front end. So, we have 50 to 100 people in room left in the second service. So therefore, what happens then when the third service commences? Here's what happens, and this is how small groups get implemented on a larger scale. When the third service commences, we are going to have to reformat our Sunday night services. This is a great crowd. I mean, I can look out here and I can tell you right now, like Karnak, we have about 215, 20 people. Richard, am I close? Yeah. Richard is Rain Man. I'm Karnak. I guess he knows. But this is not our regular Sunday night crowd. And I respect all of you that come out on Sunday night. God bless you. But we run 125 to 150. And you vote through your participation. Everybody smile. Oh, smile, 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 smile. Don't lose your false teeth if you smile too big. We vote through participation. When we go to 3 Sunday morning services, I cannot tell you the strain that creates upon me as a communicator. I don't know. I've read studies on this. They say that if you preach a 45-minute message, which I preach every bit of that at least, that it's equivalent to about a 2.5 to 3 hour cardio workout. So imagine doing 3 of those in a day. Because you're exhausted, you're spending all that air, there's all of that emotional strength that goes into it. I want to tell you, after 3 services, you're going to pour me in a cup somewhere, okay? So we're going to have to reformat Sunday night. When we do that, we will have a regular Sunday night service, as we do now, on the first Sunday night of the month. Everybody said the first Sunday night. If you need this, we'll have it on the video, the media gallery for you to refer to later. We will then have small group opportunities on the second and fourth Sunday nights of the month. Therefore, if you wish, you can go to a small group on the second and fourth Sunday nights of the month. On the third Sunday night of the month, we will be having an on-site senior service that would function much like our Thursday afternoon Bible study luncheons. We will have a service with music that caters to our seniors, along with food and fellowship and the preaching of the Word. It'll be a full-blown service, except we'll be adding a fellowship component. We will be flexible in timing on that, as I discussed with Etal recently, in that for those of you that are concerned about driving after dark, if we need to move that up in the day to help with that cause, we will be flexible in the format of timing in order to get maximum participation for that third Sunday night, which will be the senior service. I would look to Etal to lead that service for us, and I would expect we could have 80 to 100 in regular attendance as a part of that third Sunday night offering. So, I want you to understand something. For those of you that are senior adults, I say this in no way as a slight or a cut. It's just, I think, a natural progression that all of us go through as human beings. People who are typically the most averse to change are those that are older, because as we grow older, the more settled in our routines we become. I think that's just kind of a fact of life. So therefore, that's why we've tried to design a strategic approach to ministry that leaves every option on the table for our seniors. What I mean by that is this. You will have the Sunday night service as you have the regular Sunday school as you do now. You will have the regular Sunday morning worship service as you do now. You will have one Sunday night worship service in a month. You will have a special senior service. There will be a worship service with food and fellowship attached to that. And you have the opportunity to participate in small groups if you wish. Therefore, every option is being left on the table. Really, as you go down the scale in terms of ages, really to more my age category and younger, the more limited options that you have in terms of participation, because we're not offering a special 20-something or 30-something service on that night. Now, please understand, during these Sunday nights, we'll also be offering the live track. They'll still be functioning every month in another portion of the building on the first, second, and third Sundays of the month. And so that will be going on simultaneously. Now you say, Pastor, why are we going to do this? Why can't we just build more Sunday school classes. Well, I don't think it's financially feasible. And let me tell you why. It makes no sense to me to indebt the church over classroom space that will potentially get used once a week on a Sunday morning. Let me give you a scenario. Inglewood Baptist Church has a beautiful facility in Macon. If you haven't been there, you ought to go there. And they've built a beautiful 1,500-seat stadium seating worship facility. When they built that, they went to an architect and said, we want the corresponding amount of Sunday school classes that we need to support 1,500 seats in the auditorium. Now, if you're to build a 1,500-seat auditorium right now, you can do that for $4 million or less based upon today's economy. Their project cost them $21 million. $17 million was spent on educational space that primarily gets used for 45 minutes on a Sunday morning. Let me just say this. I refuse to do that. I refuse to lead you in that way. I'm not taking the construction of facilities off the table. We'll talk more about specific needs in that arena in coming months. But what I'm saying is the most expensive space that we invest in primarily is classroom space. Therefore, we need to regain real estate back in your homes in order for us to expand our ministry and to continue to build relationships. What we're also looking at is if home groups want to meet on campus, at the church, in our classrooms, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever it would be Wednesday, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday format, we will make our space available here. You can use our electricity. We'll even hire babysitters if you need child care to supplement your efforts, and you can meet here on campus instead of meeting in your home and getting your home messy and having some little rascal knock over your prize lamp that your grandma gave you. Because the kids are always the ones that mess up the small groups. Sorry, it's just the little ones, they'd mess it up. So we'll allow you to have space here during the week, as long as it doesn't conflict with the regular recurring programs that we have here. So we're going to try to put every option on the table, because here's what we're passionate about. I'm not passionate about a methodology. If you want me to be passionate about Sunday school or Bible fellowship, I'm not. I'm not against it either. It's a methodology. Am I passionate about small groups? Not really. What I'm passionate about is connecting people in relationship with one another. That's what I'm passionate about. Because at that point, if I begin to get overly passionate about one methodology versus another, I begin to undermine our ability to do ministry, to touch a maximum number of people for Jesus. And I don't want to do that, okay? The final issue related to growth barriers is the matter of personnel. Now I want to begin now, and I'm kind of winding down here. I want to begin, as we talk about personnel, by commending Richard Asbell for over and above exemplary service to this church over the last 3 years. He has been handling not only the finances and all of the logistics of the church, but he's had to do so in this growth context that is absolutely, I feared at times, just going to push him to the brink. And he doesn't let on, doesn't complain, doesn't act that way. I'm just concerned about him because I know the kind of stuff that we're all walking under. And so I want you right now, before I go any further, just to let him know how much we love and appreciate his service. So please understand, my role here is leader, but it's also to be shepherd. And as much as they're part of my staff, they're also one of my sheep. I'm their pastor. I'm their family's pastor. And I can't allow more to be placed upon them than they can bear. They have to sustain themselves. And so now with an aggressive expansion in our ministry based through small groups, abundant living classes, which will continue to expand its offerings, as well as the live track assimilation process, and now a current vacancy in our young adults ministry, structural changes need to be made per the strong recommendation of our board. As part of my strategic plan that I laid out to the board, I gave them a hiring sequence of what I thought we needed to do grow from a church right now of 650, 700 people, wherever we're landing this, up to about 12 to 1,500 people. I gave them a sequence of the hirings I thought that we needed to make in order to do that. And they opted at their discretion to want to move upon some structural changes that I'd recommended in the plan in order to take pressure off of the staff and also to be able to oversee these ministries that I've been laying out to you. Therefore, I want to announce to you that Pastor Gabe Cox has been promoted to our new executive pastor of church ministries, as well as our young adult pastor, and Richard Asbell has been refocused and retitled as executive pastor of finance administration. If you are familiar with the corporate model, that would make me the CEO, Richard the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and Gabe the Chief Operating Officer. That's how it would fit in a corporate model. And so Pastor Gabe, I want to invite you to come up here, buddy. Where are you? There you are. And would you give him a round of applause? Come here, buddy. Gabe has done an exceptional job in leading our young people. I just saw his current numbers, and youth on Wednesdays is averaging between 80 to 100 kids. It's fantastic. The kids love him. I know they do. However, I want the kids to understand you're not losing him. He's still here. However, he's going to become very disciplined in his role as executive pastor, and he will be instrumental in leading our young adults. So as our kids graduate from youth, they will be promoted into his hands. It'll be a really good succession of ministry from youth ministry now to young adult ministry. And beyond that, he is going to be instrumental in mentoring our new youth pastor. And so Gabe, I don't have a microphone here. I don't want you so close to my face you talking mine. You think I'm kidding. Say a few words, Gabe.
Well, first off, let me just thank Pastor and the board. Coming from a position in Arkansas in an unhealthy church, me and my wife have experienced a healthy church, a healthy staff, and I am who I am as a minister and as a man because of this man. And I don't...
You'll make me cry, dude.
I don't even... I love our pastor. And I don't say that, to gain anything. I love this man. Apart from my father, he has a major voice in my life. And he's done a lot for me and Jessica. And so this move, I'm excited about. I will tell you that when I felt like God called me into ministry at 18, 19 years old, I felt like in my heart that I want to be a senior pastor one day. And I feel like I'm working under the best. And this is part of the grooming and preparation that God has for me. And I would not make this decision if I was not in complete agreement with my wife. This was not on the table when I took a staff position here. This is just something that God has orchestrated. And I know that this is His will for my life, and I believe His will for this church. And so I am so grateful and thankful for this. Now, I love every single teenager in that youth group. Yeah. Hear me in that. They have my heart. I love them, and I want the absolute best for them. And for the almost 3 years of ministry here, I hope that they know my heart and that my sole purpose was to connect them with Jesus Christ. Yeah. And I felt like me and my wife did that to the best of our ability. But as we are entering in this new season, in this new aspect of ministry, we are excited. And I am grateful for the board and for Pastor for this opportunity.
Thank you, man. I might reconsider him getting close to my microphone after that little speech, I tell you. Whew. So, Gabe's taken on young adults. He's taken on the role of the operational side. And if you would like their job descriptions, this is how transparent we want to be, we'll be happy to email that to you at your request. So email us, request it, and we'll send attachments to you that shows the breakdown between Richard's responsibilities and Gabe's, so you can fully understand how we'll be functioning in who you'll need to go to. And we'll be issuing flow charts after the first of the year to kind of help you understand, particularly if you're in ministry, departmental leader, or other facets of ministry in the church, kind of who your next in line in the succession of authority is in terms to talk and to get answers and to get the provisions that you need to lead your ministries. So this now leaves a vacancy in our youth pastor position. And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm pleased to announce to you that Stephen Bailey has agreed to become our new Minister of Youth beginning January 1st. Following his graduation, and you better graduate from Southeastern, Stephen has been serving. Come here, get close. We hug around here. Just don't touch my cheek.
I'll try not to cry.
Oh, hey, it's flowing up here. He's been serving as junior high pastor at Victory Church in Lakeland. And I don't know if you're familiar with Victory Church. Victory Church runs between 4,000 and 5,000 people. He has been the junior high pastor and then now recently the senior high pastor at their satellite campus, which meets at the mall. Help me with the name down the south side of Lakeland.
Lakeside Village.
Lakeside Village. And has been working in tandem with one of the associate pastors there who leads that campus, leading their junior high and senior high ministries. Stephen doesn't know this, but I've been watching him for 3 years now, to see his progression through school, to see how he's performed academically, to see how he's performed in leadership roles. I was so pleased and proud and honored that when District Council was hosted here back in May, that the president of Southeastern, Ken Engel, chose Stephen to come and address the entire Georgia district as an exemplary model of what a student should be at Southeastern. And it was great. I was proud. So Stephen has an understanding that he's coming into a mentoring relationship with Gabe, but really for the first year it's going to be kind of an apprentice model where he's going to be leading actively, but under Gabe's supervision, calendar planning. Gabe will be there to troubleshoot any problems he runs into. If there are missteps along the way, and here's the deal, nothing against Stephen, but he's coming right out of Bible college. There's going to be missteps. I mean, I'm still misstepping, and he's going to misstep, and all of us misstep, and so we're going to try to do our best to be a safety net and to help in those things and to really try to lead him through this process of his growth as a youth pastor. But let me talk to you about Stephen's attributes for a second. I'll let him talk. The thing I really like about Stephen is he's a team player. I believe he would do anything that we ask him to do. He has excelled in school. He has great experience. He understands our church culture, and that's critically important. He understands who you are. He understands what our church is about. He grew up here, for those of you that did not know that. And I think he provides great chemistry with our team, and he's teachable. And I've found that if we can have great chemistry in our relationships together, if someone is teachable, if they have a heart after God, then we can make anything work. And that's what I'm confident in Stephen and in his life and ministry. Buddy, we're glad to have you on board. Talk to him for a second.
Well, first of all, let me just say what an honor it is to be able to come back to such a great church. I tell you what, I love Victory Church in Lakeland, Florida, but there's something about your home church. There's really something about it. So much so, my first semester, it took me a while. I didn't skip church, for those of you that are wondering. But it took me a little while to find a church that meant as much to me as you guys do. And since I've been in Lakeland, Pastor Mark and Pastor Gabe have just been excellent and just getting to know me. For those of you that don't know, Pastor Mark was really never my pastor. Pastor Gabe was never really my youth pastor. I believe my last Sunday here was actually Pastor Mark's auditioning.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call it.
Tryout.
Tryout.
Yeah.
You did a great job, by the way. It was good.
Thanks.
See,
Worked out.
it worked out for you. But I'll tell you what, since I've went down there, every time pastors come down to Lakeland, every time Pastor Gabe's come down to Lakeland, they have just sat down with me and taken care of me and just mentored me. And over the years, I thought, man, what a dream it would be to be able to work with these guys. And now that dream is finally coming true. And so once again, thank you guys so much. I love students. When I was a middle school student here in our youth ministry, I got called into ministry at the youth camp in Forsyth. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And since then, I've just been dedicated to studying God's Word, just learning everything that I possibly can from Southeastern. Make no mistake about it, I love students more than anything. I believe that I was placed on this planet to tell students about Jesus. And I'm just so lucky that I had youth pastors that poured into me. And that's exactly what I want to do. And I'll make this declaration. You can hold me accountable to it. I will not stop until every student in this town has an opportunity for Christ. And I truly believe that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love this town. I love the base. I love the people. I graduated from Warner Robins High School. 2 people cheered. Awesome. We need to go evangelize a little bit more, I guess. But once again, thank you guys so much, and thank you, Pastor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, one other line on here, and I'll let you ask questions. Give you an update on the Macon campus that we talked about last month. I realize some of you weren't here. A very, very brief update of what we're talking about. If you go to Macon and you get off on the River Crossing shopping mall exit, which is Riverside Drive there, and you go up to the intersection there, the main intersection where you turn in to that shopping center, instead of turning left and you would go to Barnes & Noble and Joseph A. Banks and all that stuff, Charming Charlie's. We talked about that last month. You turn right, and you'd go about a block down the road, and there sitting there is a shell of a building that is about 4,600 square feet that is ready to be refurbished that looks just like a church. And so God has put in our heart to start a satellite campus there that would be partially video venue. So some of it will be recorded messages here, shared there. And then some of it will be live preaching through the campus pastor, Jason Kennedy, that we announced last month to you, who will be coming from Decatur, Alabama, beginning January 1st in a commuting kind of relationship for a while. And then I'll be there preaching once every 2 months, and one of our staff members will be preaching there once every 2 months. So half the time they get live preaching, half the time they get video venue. We'll have live worship there, live kids programs, live youth programs, etc. And we'll be building a team and all that sort of thing. It's being financed by the National Assemblies of God General Council and through our district through basically a combination of a $70,000 0% interest loan that is paid back through roughly 5% of our total monthly receipts. So what does that mean? If we bring in $100 in a month, then we owe them $5, and we pay them that incremental amount until all the money's paid back. And that's their way of launching churches, new churches all across America. So we're very thankful. It's a great deal. And so we have submitted our application to Macon Planning and Zoning. Richard has done a fantastic job submitting a multi-page presentation proposal that seeks to counteract the opposition that's been there historically against this particular location being used as a church. And there's been significant opposition. The main concern is that we will go in there and obstruct the liquor licenses that could potentially go into the vacant parcels that front Riverside Drive in between where our church building would be and the River Crossing Shopping Center. We have no qualms. As I told you last month, they can bring hell to our doorstep, and we're going to be there to try to reach them. It doesn't matter to me. If I could sign a waiver and say, have a bar next door, I wouldn't care because I try to reach every drunk that was in there. But I can't do that. It's state law, and there's certain footages that apply in these situations. However, we've done quite a bit of research, and we really don't prohibit anybody, depending on how they set their building on the property, from going in there and doing anything they want. The only thing that would be maybe even a possible cause of concern, Richard, would be, help me, is it the liquor store or the liquor by the drink? Okay, same footage. And that's only of 2 parcels out of 5 that are available there. So we have 2 potential landowners that may have an issue. One has been trying to sell the lot for 10 years for a convenience store and hadn't done anything. And if he puts a convenience store in there and they serve packaged liquor, there is no footage stipulation on that. And so there's one other landowner that's adjacent that is a cause of concern. What we're wanting is just to pray for God's favor. We have looked at a variety of approaches on how we would go in there and how we would label ourselves, and we just made a decision that we're going to go in there as a church, and we're going to go in there with guns blazing and say, we're here, we have a right to be here, these are vacant lots, it's been vacant for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, most of them are still zoned agricultural, and we have as much right to be there as anybody else. And so we're going to go in there and just trust for the favor of God. Here's the issue. When you apply as a church, if they deny you, you have to wait 6 months before you can reapply. So our launch date is set for April 1st, 2012, Palm Sunday. So that would push us beyond our launch date, which means we'd have to look for another building potentially in the area to look to. We don't want to do that. We really feel like this is really uniquely suited for us. I talked to you about the adjacent property owner whose building we also want to rent for youth and children. He is very willing to talk to us now, wasn't. And just in the last month or so, he's kind of wanting to know, hey guys, when are you going to do this? I'd like to talk to you about it and discover the possibilities. So we're seeing a lot of things kind of going our direction. But when you go to planning and zoning, as most of you know, there's no guarantees. All bets are off. So we've got to just pray that God will help us. So we're going to spend some time praying before we leave tonight to ask God to help us in this regard. At this time, I want to open the floor to questions and answers.
Remind us again about the 3 services, the time frame in there.
8:30, 10, and 11:30. So right now, if you come to the early service, we are operating on an 8:30 to a 9:45 time format. That's an hour and 15-minute format. We're leaving an hour and a half window for each of these services. So it's a little bit more than what we're offering right now for the early service.
Okay, how will that affect the children's church?
Children's church will run simultaneous, probably in the 10 and 11:30 service. 8:30, we would have to see if there was enough young families coming. But if there's families coming, we'll have it at 8:32. So we'll have kids church 8:30, 10, and 11:30 all the way through. And Sunday school would currently have to run probably during the 10 o'clock hour, simultaneous to the worship service. So Sunday school would be going on in the perimeter classrooms while we would be having a worship service in here. We just be real busy. So, Pam?
Pastor Mark, I have 2 questions. One concerns the Macon site and the planning and zoning meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it appropriate, or have you asked for representation from that community that would be supportive of us going there?
We've been advised not to hire legal representation. In order, if we do, we'll incite a fight. Okay. Yes. So let's kind of answering that part first, but then going to the consultation we've been receiving from our real estate advisors who have had history with these parcels for the last 10 or 15 years. They have advised us not to tip our hand, to have discussions, that both of the landowners that are in question are very hostile to the idea of a church. Therefore, they feel like it would make things worse, and they would probably lawyer up on us if we tried to open that discussion. Because we were going to be willing to sit down as good neighbors, have an eye to eye, and say, listen, this is why we want to be here. They said that would probably make things worse. So we've just kind of crossed our fingers. Here's what we've really been praying for. If you don't pray this way, it would make me happy. But anyway, we're praying that notice will go out during this holiday season of December 10th, 11th, and 12th. Nobody will see it, nobody will show up, and we'll fly through zoning. That's what we're hoping. Holy stealth mission. I mean, just under the radar, okay? That's what we're hoping. That's what we're hoping.
The other question is concerning the change in the format.
Yes, ma'am.
Services, you didn't mention, I believe, the Wednesday evening services and what would be happening.
Unchanged. It would still function just as it normally does. There are some questions about how youth would function, because currently they have small groups on Sunday nights, meeting weekly. So we would probably begin to make some adjustments to do small groups with them, maybe in its current form unchanged, or some modified small group format for our young people. And it may not change at all. We may have to make minor modification, but in terms of that, I don't see there much of a disruption there.
And one more question about
Yes, ma'am.
the abundant living crisis.
Yes, ma'am.
Tuesday nights, how will that be affected?
Anything that's recurring and that already takes priority in the calendar would not be infringed upon by any type of small group offerings. So that we have abundant living on Tuesday night, if we're offering people the opportunity to bring their home groups on campus, we would have to offer it on Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then work other events around that as priorities. But it would not disrupt the Tuesday night, because we're seeing great success with that. We're seeing great response. I'm so thankful to God for the benefit that people are deriving from that, community recognition that we're getting, And we've started with 5 classes, or 6. Richard, help me, 6. And our plan is to expand that to maybe 8, 10, or 12 progressively as time goes on, based upon the needs that we see represented. Okay. Brad?
That's Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I remember you saying the building that in Macon that was built was originally built as a church.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did they go through any issues, or was there any groundwork already laid down for planning zoning, or is that the source of our opposition?
We have a file about that thick of the process they went through, and they got to the final stage and pulled their application. They were kind of reading the tea leaves and said, we're not going to win this, and they decided to pull it and then went a different direction. I think there was also some internal discussions within the ministries of that particular church of saying, well, we may just stay where we're at anyway and use this as a leasing opportunity, and therefore a gymnastics studio went in there and some other things that occupied that. So the zoning has went partially through. Planning and zoning, in fact, never made a decision with regard up or down on the church issue. They kept tabling it. It was like they didn't want to vote against God kind of thing. And I hope they feel that way again. And so it kept getting tabled. So what Richard did, Richard went through there and basically earmarked every opposition that the people made, from dating back all the way to 2001. And we countered in our argument every opposition that was raised in the filings in the file this thick. And everything from screening issues, sound issues, time of usage, the impairment it would make upon zoning uses, property values. Man, we try to answer it all. And so hopefully we'll be thorough, and God will favor us, and we'll fly through. Okay.
Pastor?
Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions in reference to the small groups.
Yes, sir.
First of all, will there be a curriculum involved? And what
question.
type of oversight and training will occur? Because I know having small groups can create some problems.
Yes, sir.
If there's not the proper oversight and the proper training for those individuals
Yes, sir.
that will be hosting them.
Actually, in Gabe's new portfolio, he will be pastor of small groups in his executive profile. Therefore, he'll be responsible for curriculum and curriculum approval for all the groups that are functioning. We are looking at some groups functioning on the basis of a deeper study of what I preach about on Sunday morning. So let's say I preached on Jesus is coming. We would provide an additional study sheet that would go into more scriptures, deeper references of what I dealt with on Sunday morning to make that points of discussion within the small group. We also would like to use that in tandem with curriculum that would be approved, that Pastor Gabe would research. In fact, he's already begun the research for that. And he would be also responsible for the training. He would also become your liaisons for Bible fellowship. So now any questions that you would have or support that you would need from the pastoral side or the pastoral staff will now flow to Gabe instead of to Richard. So we will try to tie together training opportunities not only for small groups but also for Bible fellowship, so that we're basically maximizing our resources. That is our hope and goal.
With the opening of the church in Macon, now how are we going to populate that church, or you launch, where are the people going to come from to launch that work in Macon?
Okay. We're receiving $70,000 in monies from the General Council in Springfield and Macon District combined, the district office in Macon. $30,000 from the national, $40,000 from Macon as seed money to start this thing up. Most of that's going to be used in renovation, in which we've got a lot of folks who are very skilled in that. They've done everything that you see here. So we will set them to work again, refurbishing that building. But there is a certain line item in our budget that we've already built in for marketing and advertising that will be used to get the word out about the church starting there. You will also see a real shift in the programs that we have on WGNM. It's Channel 7, Cox Cable, and if you have ComSouth, it's something different. It's different on every cable system, but on WGNM, the Christian station, you will start seeing commercials from me saying, hey Macon, the assembly at River Crossing is coming your way, brand new church, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We'll be doing that. We'll be doing some other commercials. Also, there'll be a group, a launch team that will be assembled from here. Probably, we're hoping 50 in number. And our goal is to have the campus pastor to come and to share in some of the preaching opportunities here on our campus between the months of January and April, where some of you can get a feel for his ministry. And that we're going to try to strategically place some people in certain spots, and then we're going to leave it open to some folks who want to go. And so therefore we've got a solid contingency of people, and we're just going to build it one soul at a time. It's a faith venture. It's a risk. I have to admit, I haven't done this before. We're learning as much as possible. My friend who's flying in tonight from Milwaukee has a very successful small group ministry, has a church of 1,100 in the suburbs of Milwaukee. He grew up 10 miles from me. He's an Arkansas boy, so the fact that he's even surviving up there is a miracle. But he's got that church up there, and he has small group ministry that's fantastic. He's got 60% of his church involved in home small group ministry. He's also recently launched a satellite campus in West Milwaukee. He's in the northern part with a launch, his first day of 400 people in that church. He and I are spending the next 2 days together, picking each other's brain. He's going through a building program right now. He knows I've been through those things, so I'm looking over his building plans, and we're going to just cram the next 2 days of just helping each other, praying with each other, troubleshooting. He's meeting with our board and staff 7 o'clock Wednesday night to discuss multi-site locations and small groups so that our board can be informed by his insights. So we're going to try to learn best practices, kind of learn what others have done wrong, and really try to put this together in a cohesive plan. There's some things, quite honestly, we don't have answers for right now, but we're working hard to get those answers, looking at people who are doing it and doing it well, and trying to formulate some details to the plans. Also, the campus pastor is coming from Decatur. Right now, he's attending a different satellite church in the state of Alabama every single weekend. He's been to 4 already. His next assignment is to go to Birmingham to the Church of the Highlands, to their satellite campuses, and to learn from them, because they're doing about the best in the Southeast. And so he's taking notes of everything that he's seeing. He's getting FaceTime with all the pastors. So he's also actively helping us in our research right now to kind of come up with some answers that we need. So.
I'd like to ask something.
Yes, ma'am.
In Macon, Christ Chapel is on that side of town.
Yes, ma'am.
Would we be encroaching on their domain? And another question is, there are plenty of areas around this area that we might need to put a satellite church in instead of way up there.
Right. Thanks for your comments. Couple of things. Let me answer several parts to that question comment. Number one, we are within 2 miles of Christ Chapel. However, our district office feels like that North Macon is underpopulated in terms of Assembly of God churches. The next church from us would be where Victory Christian Center is building, which is 6 miles away at the intersection of Zebulon and Bass Road. Those would be the only 3 in North Macon. All the rest of them are south, and particularly south of downtown and west of 475. And so because of that, the district, through their advisement, said we want more Assembly of God churches, particularly in the north part of town. That's the primary thing that we've been operating off of, and also praying about it, kind of where we think we would best fit in the Macon area. With regard to other campuses, we are not opposed, should God lead us, to put other churches in this area. The district has already begun some conversations with me about that if this one goes well, of looking to do it again. Maybe something in extreme South Houston County, maybe out toward Fort Valley somewhere. We are wide open, and even going beyond that geographically. The Lord's been kind of speaking to my heart about even things that are a considerable distance away, where the Assembly of God community is underserved. Let me just say this to you. We have 5 population centers in the state of Georgia, in excess of 200,000 people in metropolitan population that has no Assembly of God church that runs more than 150. So I have a big vision that if this goes well, we'll look at other opportunities as God presents them to us, to look right here closer to home and even further away, and just kind of let God lead us in this process. We kind of fell into this one by accident from our perspective. I'm sure God's leading our steps. but we didn't really plan or set out to do it. This was kind of just something that happened. The building came online, and we just kind of went with it. Was there another part of your question? Because I want to make sure I answered all of it. Okay, thank you. But I do respect that, and so that you know, those ethical issues in terms of communication with pastors has already been covered. Everybody that we're in close proximity to, including the two churches that I've mentioned, Christ Chapel and Victory Christian Center, both has been contacted by our district superintendent, alerting them that we have been in consultation working together to plant this church, and if they have any questions, that they can feel free to call me. Those two churches that have been contacted, one of the pastors has contacted me. We had a 20-minute conversation. I answered all the questions he had, and at the end of the conversation, he said, "God bless you and welcome to Macon." So the other one had no concerns whatsoever. And so we've been trying to do it the right way, be ethical and above board and transparent. And what you understand about the affinity groups, this is for us to have relationship with one another, get to know one another. This isn't going to be, the affinity group's not primarily designed to be Bible study groups. These are designed for Christian men to get together for iron to sharpen iron and to support one another. And I think that in that, great ministry can take place because as relationships are formed, guys will eventually open up and talk about things that they deal with in their life. But it's not going to be a Bible study per se where, you got a fishing rod in one hand and in the Gospel of Luke, cast your net on the other side of the boat. It's not going to be like that. We just want people to get together and just be Christian men and let positive examples rub off on each other. All right? I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna limit to 3 more questions, then we're gonna be done. All right? My body's, I've got jet lag. I'm still adjusting. I'm working on 2 hours sleep from last night, so I want to limit it to 3 questions, if that's okay. Joyce, number 1.
This is just I heard a couple months ago there was only one divorce recovery group in the city, churches.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one caved in, but I was wondering if we were going to have anything, for the divorced people, or Christians or non-Christians or anything like that in the future? Or?
Yes, ma'am. I think that's something that we are very much open to. I don't want to seem like a politician of promising things, that we can't deliver on. We tried to go with the most logical launch we could for these groups and to use that as a foundation to build upon, hoping that recovery groups would take different forms as we progress. For example, right now in the dependency and addiction group, that's all it is, and it's all inclusive. Well, as you know, addiction has many facets. Some may be, I'm not going to go into the whole list, okay? But there's lots of them. It takes many varieties. If you go to somewhere like Southside, they have an established program that's grown over time, and they become very specialized. So they have a specialized area for a certain kind of addiction because they've started small and grown. That's our hope, that we can grow and expand and do that, because here's kind of something to think about. Some would say, well, why? If Southside's doing that, would you want to do that? Well, but the deal is that people who are in recovery mode, particularly those that are coming off drug and alcohol, when I was pastoring in Charlotte, we started a program, and literally there would be people that would go to a recovery group on Monday night and Tuesday night, and then one on Wednesday night and Thursday night and Friday night, because they knew if they had idle time on their hands, they'd go back to the bottle or the drugs. And so they would literally go from one recovery group to other, receiving ministry. So I looked at it as a great kingdom collaborative thing, that we're not in competition, we're kind of helping one another. And because some people who may come from a certain type of background say, well, I'm not going to go to one at Southside Baptist Church, but I might go to one at the Assembly of God Church or whatever. So we're just trying to open the door wider for people to find help. But I think in time you will see the addition of that, of divorce recovery as part of our offerings. It's something we'd certainly love to do. 2 more. Darlene?
Actually, I do not have a question. I'm very excited about this going forward. And many of us grew up And you cannot reach the younger generation that way. It is not happening. And I am
No.
excited about this because we need to reach the younger generation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? One more question. Then I'll make a closing comment and we'll go. Going once, going twice, going. Let me tell you one story and then we'll go. I know, don't say, I'll be fast, I promise. Let me be candid with you. One criticism I get, and I'm not all the time trying to answer my critics, but I think it's pertinent to this discussion tonight. I've had the criticism leveled toward me, and I wear it as a badge of honor, but is Pastor, you're all about growth. Well, in my mind, I like that better than church death. And you really get one or the other. You don't stay where you are. If you do, you're just a bunch of fuss and fighting folks that just use it as religious sport to occupy your time. And I wouldn't remain here anyway if it was like that. I'd be gone. No matter how much I love you or this community, if the church turns into that, adios, or as they say in Hawaii, aloha. Okay. So, I hear that. It floats to the wind. It gets back to me. All right? And I've had this question asked. Never directly, but always through an intermediary. When is the church ever going to be big enough for you? We've almost doubled in 3 years. Isn't that good enough? Can't we just kind of take it easy? Well, there's a story, real quick, I want to tell you that I think makes perfect sense, and it's a great way to close the night. Tommy Barnett, I don't know how many of you are familiar with him, pastors the great church, First Assembly of God, Phoenix, Arizona. He went to pastor there 36 years ago. First Assembly Phoenix had gone through a rough time, and it was down to 250 people. And within 5 years, they had grown to 1,000. And because of that, they had moved out of the little building they were in, and they were meeting in a schoolhouse, a school auxiliary building that looked like a barn, literally like a cartoon barnyard. And so it was creating a lot of strain, particularly on the older segment of the church. And because they were having to go to this new location and all the things that were familiar and precious to them were gone. I mean, they're meeting in a barn, for heaven's sake. So it was tough on them because they were trying to build new facilities and expand, and it was tough. And so Pastor Barnett is in his office, in the makeshift office in that barn, and one of the older saints, a little lady, comes by and knocks on his door, and she's visibly angry. And she says to him, Pastor Barnett, I have a question to ask you. He said, when is this church going to be big enough for you? We've grown from 250 to 1,000 in 5 years. When is it going to be enough for you? Are you just wanting to be a rock star or, a TV preacher or this, that, and the other? And she was just really ripping into him. And he had never thought about it. And he couldn't answer her. He sat there dumbfounded. She says, I don't have my same parking space anymore. I don't have my same pew I sit in. I don't like this. There's all these people, I don't know their names. And I feel like my church has abandoned me. That my church has run away from me. And he sat there slack-jawed, not knowing what to say. So he does what all pastors do when they know they're in trouble. He asked her if they could pray. And so they held hands and prayed, and she went on her way. And about 3 weeks later, there's a knock at the door, and this time it's the little woman, and this time she's pleasant. And she said, Pastor, she said, you know what? He said, what? She said, I've been praying for you all week long. He said, well, sister, that's great. After our last conversation, I didn't know if you'd be back. Oh, no. I've been praying for you all week long. In fact, I've been praying that you're going to preach the most anointed sermon you have ever preached in your life this morning. I hope you have a salvation message. He said, well, why? She said, well, you remember my boy Jimmy? He lived down the East Coast. Well, he just went through a divorce, got custody of his kids, and they just moved back to Phoenix. And Jimmy, he's bitter, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with church, and he's been hurt in church splits and all the stuff we've been through as a church, but I've talked him in to come into church this morning, and he and the grandkids are going to be here. And I just want you to know, preach and give an altar call, because I'm believing that Jimmy is going to get saved this Sunday morning. He said, oh, sister, I'm sorry, I can't. She says, what do you mean? He says, our church is big enough. Here's what the little lady said. She said, there's room enough for one more. Let me say this to you. When is it big enough? Until everyone is reached. The old hymn of the church, though millions have come, there's still room for one. There's room at the cross for you. So I don't put any artificial barriers. I don't have any aspirations of saying we've got to be a church of 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is. But I want to tell you something. I believe that we serve a big God in a small city and that he can really show off and do some things here. And I struggle hard trying not to let my mind be confined by the fact there's 150,000 in the Warner Robins area. That's why I've started thinking there's 250,000 in the Macon metro area. That means there's 400,000 people we can reach. And I want to tell you, this way my mind works, I'm thinking there's about 100,000 out in Valdosta, and there's about 125 in Albany, and there's about 500,000 in Augusta, and there's about 350,000 over in Savannah. That's the way my brain works. I'm just telling you, it's a disease. Pray for my wife. I drive her crazy. So, I guess I even told the board this. I mean, this is fresh news. I mean, in my mind, I sit here seeing this, of saying, you know what? We can have a church of influence that affects public policy at City Hall. We could have a church of influence that affects the agenda at the Houston County Board of Education. We can have a church of influence that stands against the wickedness that comes into this area. But beyond that, I think we can have churches of influence in all those areas I just mentioned to you, to be the assembly at Warner Robins and the assembly at River Crossing and the assembly at Albany, excuse me. And see, I always thought, I guess Albany's a place in New York, but when I came to Georgia, I found out it was Albany. We could have the assembly at Valdosta, the assembly at Savannah or Richmond Hill or Martinez. I thought it was Martinez, but y'all call it Martinez. And you see what I'm saying? There is no limit to what I feel like God can do through our ministry if we'll have a heart that's open, that's generous, and willing to be used. Hey, I want to tell you, I believe in the premise that one church can change the world. Why not be us? And what a great story that really, for a town that most people have never heard of, we could have a church ministry that touches the entire state of Georgia. I believe that. I'm glad to go on this journey with you. Glad to go on this journey with the staff. I love you. I believe in you. I hope you believe in us. I believe in you, and I believe we can do some great things with God as our helper.